We are live.
Okay.
See, I love Zoom because it says, listen, we're setting up your meeting for Facebook Live, we're streaming live, and then we just take this exact link and we post.
Uh-huh. I love that. And I love all these new Zoom features. They tell me what's going on. There are no secret recordings. I know we're on Facebook. On my side, it like gives me a little warning. So I knew what was going on, but okay, I like
Here,
that.
I posted that for you in the chat if you ever want to
Okay.
do that. So
Okay.
now let's go here. We're going to go on gallery view so people can see both of our beautiful faces.
Okay, I like that.
Now we are live inside the group. We've been live for about a couple seconds. So welcome everybody. Madison, you can wave to everybody. It's about 5,700 members in the group.
Oh, that's it. Just a
Okay.
couple. Just a couple. Okay, no pressure. Hello, 5,700 members.
It's about 5,700 members. We added a few more.
Okay.
But everybody, I am so glad you are joining us. I know you all are popping in. Feel free to tag people who need to hear this conversation. After this recording, it will be posted on YouTube. But today, okay, and I need you to put the clapping emojis at the bottom of the screen. But we have Madison Carter, okay? She's a 2016 graduate of Syracuse University. And while she was at Syracuse, she was a reporter, an anchor, and a producer. Okay, a producer. That means she wrote her show. She edited her scripts. So yeah, that's something that we need to take into play. And then after graduation, she became a reporter in Charlottesville, Virginia for 2 years. Then moved to Buffalo, New York, where her investigative career took off. Now, before we get into the nitty gritty, because you have an extensive career and you have a very well accomplished career, just from just seeing you on Twitter, Buffalo, New York, the city, somebody even made you a mural because of your investigative reporting. But first, I want to know the person. So Madison Carter, before the reporter was added to your name,
Mhm.
tell us a little bit about you.
Wow, that's a good question. That's a hard question up top because I feel like it's something that like a lot of people are working on now. It's like, who am I apart from my career? Who am I apart from my identity? So let me tell you about my notes from therapy, okay? Because what I've been talking about, just like trying to figure out who I am. I grew up outside of DC, in one of the suburbs of DC,
Okay.
and I had a big family. Mostly was just friends with my siblings, and so learning how to make friends was always a new thing for me. But I grew up in a family of, and this is important, professional athletes. And I was the only one that wasn't a professional athlete. And so I think that really pushed me to try to find my lane because I was like, dang, like everybody I hear has all this attention. I'm like, all they're doing is wearing tight pants and running around on the field. Like, I think I have more interesting things. And so it really forced me to dig deep and like find like what's interesting about me, what do I care about, what can I show the world as well. Um, so those who can't do broadcast, and that's where I ended up. I went to Syracuse, like you mentioned, and I did not want to be a journalist growing up.
What?
No, absolutely not. No, this is not a part of my dream. Not until a year before I went to college.
Okay.
I wanted to be a lawyer and become a judge eventually, and I think that that's something people see a lot in my work. I'm very black and white. Like I'm very, this is right, this is wrong, which I think a lot of journalists, we try to stay away from. But I think that there's a way through our work to show people, to expose, certain things in the world, especially the criminal justice system, which is something that, if you look at my work, that's something that I really have a heart for.
Yes, you do.
Um, but just me as a person, like I'm really, I think I'm funny. I crack myself up. I tell people that all the time.
Crack me up. You crack me up.
I just mostly, what you talk about Twitter, me, my Twitter fingers, it's mostly just me entertaining myself on the internet. But yeah, I'm like a super just in your face. Like I love to talk. I love to chat. I love to brunch. But I think, Madison as a person is really somebody who just wants to show people something that they've never seen before.
Well, I'll tell you this much, Madison, I mean, you have risen the standard. You have risen the standard for a lot of journalists in general. I know as soon as you graduated from Syracuse University in 2016, you went right to Charlottesville, Virginia. What was that transition like? Now you've gone from undergrad to college. How was that?
So I graduated college. I was really young when I left school. because I was just so excited to be in college. I wanted to go to college my whole life. And I didn't leave once I got there. I just stayed and I took classes until they said, all right, you're done. So I got to Charlottesville as a baby. I was young and I didn't really know what, and this is the thing about colleges. I'm not sure that there's any journalism program that has designed realistic standards for what it's really like to be out there in the field. You know, you can't replicate the days that we have in a classroom setting. So it was scary. I was young, I had no money. I was in a pretty expensive starter market, but a cool starter market that was close to home, which was nice. And I was trying to figure out what the job actually was and what it meant. And so that's what it was like being in Charlottesville. And then of course, everybody heard about Charlottesville just a year into that first job, where we had the KKK and Nazi rally and Unite the Right. So that was a really interesting experience, but I think one that set me up for probably the rest of my career, and especially what we saw this past summer.
See, I really know you from your work in Buffalo. And I say that just because, I mean, outstanding investigative, like you would really be going through court documents.
Yeah.
You know, you will be going through, the police department said this, well, the sheriff, said this. So now what do you say? And you would bring both parties together and you would get a response. And I think the deal with your investigative reporting is that you got a solution.
Yeah.
A lot of people, they report and then they say, okay, now we're going to leave it up to you. But then there's also this investigative reporter in Miami. She will go after people who really do credit fraud and will get people their money back.
Mm-hmm.
And I see you that you get people their justice, whether it's in the police department or whether it is in a civil matter, or whether it's with the county and the state, or if it's a person versus the county. So now let's talk about your time in Buffalo.
Okay.
I mean, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, you probably went viral once or twice.
we had a couple little situations there, but I mean, that was amazing, because I think so many journalists, I know there's a debate, I'm not going to get into no beef right now, but there's this debate about just journalists and trying to really make a lane. And so to be able to have like national and international recognition for my work, as opposed to, like I was popping off at the mouth or like some outfit I posted, that was a big deal to me, for people to be able to see my work that far. Because I felt like that's kind of what kept me going.
Well, let me ask you this. Explain to us, with your time in Buffalo, what did you learn? Because for people who this is their first time meeting you virtually,
mm-hmm.
I mean, you are doing an extraordinary job in Atlanta now, but Buffalo, how was it really reporting during George Floyd? That was tough for a lot of people mentally.
It was absolutely challenging. And I think another reason why it was so challenging was because we hadn't come out of it. We were in the midst of COVID reporting from home. And so for so many journalists, it was like, I try hard. There's not a lot of work-life separation, especially with kind of work we do at long-term investigative, but it was like you roll out of bed, coronavirus, get back in bed, coronavirus. Like you just are constantly having to deal with that. And then this happens, the George Floyd murder. And then there were these riots that broke out. So I think what made it especially challenging in a place like Buffalo was I remember a tweet came up on my timeline. I tweeted how I was the only Black journalist out covering that demonstration out of all 4 stations, all the newspapers. And that made it really challenging, because I saw some things that I'm gonna tell you tried me.
Yeah.
Watching other journalists standing next to me reporting, or even speaking to the different people out there. Because I also had this dual role. I was president of the Buffalo Association of Black Journalists at the time. So I remember the next day calling a lot of people's newsrooms and bosses to say, hey, I don't want to start no beef publicly, but I need to talk to you about what I saw from different journalists out there. So it was hard, because it was not only this like really challenging moment that I didn't get to process as a human being, that murder. It was also having to be in a position to teach my own newsroom and other newsrooms how to report on racial issues. It was also trying to teach the community how to understand this complex but really troubling racial issue, while being informative at the same time. struggling to help people see that I'm not reporting with a bias, I'm reporting with an experience.
Yes.
I think those are just a few of the things that made that time really, really challenging.
Let's talk about being a journalist and being an investigative reporter, because I saw where you have an Atticus reporter. And this is something that really, I can tell, even when you were talking about your time processing it and calling other newsrooms, you put in a lot of behind the scenes work.
Mm-hmm.
I read your article, I believe it was with the Washington Post, and it was like, you know what, you want to be a newsroom leader.
Mm-hmm.
So when we talk about the difference between being a journalist and then being an investigative reporter, is there a difference because you are fighting for people?
No, an investigative reporter and a journalist, they're both, it's the same role. We're all after the same thing. We just have different approaches, I would say. And my role you mentioned Atticus. So my role now in Atlanta, I'm doing long form journalism, which anybody who's seen my stuff, y'all know, my friends will call me who are, general assignment reporters. And they're like, girl, why is this story so long? You got a commercial in here? Like, because you just know the daily cycle of news, you're required to turn out pieces quickly and efficiently. And I decided to leave the normal cycle of news because I kept running into challenges that I couldn't overcome as a journalist. And that was that I didn't feel like and I'm gonna put this on me. There are some journalists who do a great job at it. They can tell you everything you need to know in 90 seconds, but they're few and far between. My problems with journalism was like, I feel like the cycle of having to turn out stories every day, churn out ideas, I couldn't give context to the pieces that deserved it. Right. And I think when you miss context, that's where you have people coming out to say like, oh, the news doesn't report the facts, the news isn't telling the story. And like, that's not it. It's just these journalists don't have the time.
Right.
So I left that normal cycle and I joined a team called Atticus. We do long form docuseries where I tell the story until it's done. I get to travel around the country. I get to get all the pieces that I need and tell the story. But to answer your original question, is there a difference between investigative journalism and regular journalism? Like my answer is, it's the difference is the depth.
Yeah.
I think the difference is the depth. I go much deeper. I explore complex issues and I find people who can really explain them. Whereas your day-to-day general assignment reporting, I just got to get you the information, enough information for you to do what you want with it.
Right.
Yeah.
And even when we talk about investigative reporting, that reminds me of 2020. How really on Fridays, I would legit do this as a kid. I would love to just sit there, wait. It was on Friday night. I was probably in middle or high school and just watch all the 2020 stories. Oh my goodness, it was mystery murder. Yes. Or it was this, or it was that. I was like, dang, he did it. Then it came out, no, it was the uncle. So it was all kind of stuff. I was like, For those stories, I said, when you talk about being an Atticus reporter and really getting into the depth of the storytelling and saying, listen, we have more time to talk about this. Let's dive into this. And most of those, they turn into series and conversations and whatnot. But now let's go back into the depth. Yeah. How long does it take you to prepare? Because when I'm looking at maybe in Atlanta, the sex trafficking or the child murders, those take a lot of time. And I can tell that's a special.
Yes.
I'm not asking for your specific process, but I want people to know how long it really takes to get this information.
Well, you're not asking, but I'm gonna give it to you. The process is, I mean, my team is, so I went from turning 6 to 7 stories a week to doing 6 to 7 stories a year. And that is because I'm working on exactly what you said, what in a newsroom you call special projects. That is my entire team. We do special projects and it takes so long. My process now, so I'll tell you a series we're working on, and the subject matter is challenging. Right now, we're talking about Black babies dying by suicide. And I'm not talking about kids. I'm not talking about teenagers. I'm not talking about youth. I'm talking about babies. I'm talking about 6-year-olds, 7-year-olds, and 8-year-olds. And it's a really difficult topic that we're investigating and why resources aren't being poured into this the way they were in the early 2000s when white youth were dying at some of these rates. And so for that story, it's not only, it's like, okay, it's understanding the material. You have to then do research, find out what's out there, what academic papers have been written. You're reaching out to those academics. And then, you have to approach these families, right? So that even takes that just takes some mental fortitude to prepare. And then you're talking to these families, and it's not just I'm really sorry this happened. It's building a relationship before you sit down with this family that's gone through this tragedy with the camera. So that could take a couple of weeks. And then, let's say, okay, now you have academics, you have families, you have researchers, you have counselors, you have school districts. Now let's go interview all those people. All right, now you got all those stories. How do you tell an audience this story, right? Like, how do you ease them into? So then there's weeks of writing, there's weeks of revision, there's weeks of reshooting, there's going out, getting more B-roll. So like, think about how long all this takes. It might take me 4 months.
That's right.
Or I had a story I worked on for 2 years regarding men who had been laid off from their jobs. So it's hard to put a timeline on a story. A lot of it is waiting on documents. That takes the longest. Waiting on people to give you stuff they don't want to give you, that you're owed as a journalist, a member of the public.
And you brought up a really good point. It might take 4 months, and then people will go back and say the purpose of the story, because there are some college students out there within our Facebook group. If there are hiring managers, general managers, recruiters, but most of all, there are people who are looking for their next job or who want their first job. And if you're just now watching this, Madison Carter, who's a 2016 graduate of Syracuse University, she is an investigative reporter or Atticus reporter in Atlanta, Georgia. And she really walked through the process on what it is to prepare for one of these stories. And also, when we talk about the purpose, you talking about, hey, listen, why are Black babies dying as suicide, most likely under the age of 6 or 7, and why aren't the resources being funded? Those stories are used so they can do what? Help people get the funding, to help people get the research, and to save lives. If you were to wrap up, as in investigative reporting, is it for the people, or is it really for the viewer? How do you frame it?
That's a great question. Investigative reporting is so often solutions based, right? Like, if you're going to spend that much time on a story, I want to see something happen. When I was hired for my job, I asked them, I was like, what is this? This job doesn't really exist in local journalism. And what am I supposed to be doing? What should I do? And my boss said, listen, do whatever you want. Take whatever time you want. I'll give you what you need. The only requirement I have of you is to change the world. And I was
wow.
okay, so just change the world. That's it. But that is the only, that is my job description. That is how I am measured. She said, you must change the world. And I think that if you could wrap up and sum up what investigative journalism aims to do, like, that's what it is. It might be, my job's a national job, but for local jobs, when I was in Buffalo, like, I wanted to change what was happening in somebody's day-to-day life.
And why? Why? I can tell you're passionate about it, but why?
Because I think that there's so much that's happening that people deal with in the world that you have to endure. And it shouldn't be that way, because so many people are worried about their livelihoods, right? So I think that, and when you ask me why, I'm like, it's one of those things that's just inside me. Well, I told you I wanted to be a judge because there's right and wrong. And like, that's just how I operate, and that's how I move through life. I'm like, this is right and this is wrong. Can I help these people? Can I help these people get their money back? Why are you taking their money off of some school cameras when school's not even in session? That don't make no sense.
Whoa, Madison Carter, love it.
I'm sitting here, and there's just, I think that, and the last answer to this part of the question, I think, is there's so much distrust in media. There's so much, hatred towards journalism these days. And like I said, I get some of it. There's a lot of, misplaced anger, but I think that investigative journalism, like, piece by piece, is just helping rebuild some of the trust in communities, helping show people how much journalism is needed, how much it changes people's lives in the world. you know, we are not only just keeping a record of history, but for some journalists, like we're changing that in certain
Right.
circumstances.
What two stories in Buffalo really propelled your career? Um, because I mean, I think with diversity and inclusion with social justice era, that really prompted the hiring of a lot of Black execs. We see ABC's president.
Mm-hmm.
We got,
MSNBC.
yeah, um, and then MSNBC, yes, her. And then also just a lot of Black managers who should have already been in those places.
Yeah.
But now, after it's all settled and done, when the dust is settled 5, 10 years later, what can we look at with diversity and inclusion now?
Um, it's a great time to be Black. I'm gonna tell you that. And I know that. Excuse me, I'm right by the window on a busy street.
Okay.
It's a great time to be Black. Because right now everyone's like, oh gosh, Black people, is that what we want? Is that what? And I'm like, yes. And here we are. Even my position, I remember I got emotional. First off, I'm never on some like happy to be here stuff. Like I have my dream job. It's a cool job. But even during the interview process, I got emotional because I was like, you don't see Black people, not just Black women, Black people in these lead. I'm in the most prominent position in my entire company in Tegna. There's our Verify series and then there's Atticus, right? And I'm like, you don't get to see us in these positions. You see like the Boyd Huberts, you see like all these other great storytellers, but you never see any young Black people in these positions, not because we're not qualified, just because nobody ever thinks to put us there. So I think it was a big deal, you know, for my hire to exist. But I think when you look back on what we can be doing right now, it's that. It's giving Black people a shot at these positions so that we can show you like, hey, we can do this too.
And you know what? I want to add to that because oftentimes, whether it's African American, Latinos, um, minorities, Asians, Pacific Islander, we have to know that those jobs are available and we have to know how to prepare for those jobs.
Ooh,
Within DCOW, we have Black, we have white, and I really want everyone to know that you can be a Madison too. Madison prepared. You put in a lot of hard work at Syracuse. You
mm-hmm.
put in a lot of hard work. That prepared you for Virginia. You
Mm-hmm.
did not know what you were going to encounter in Buffalo.
I know I was born in Buffalo.
What?
Right, right.
What? Wait a second. You want me to do what? Then I have to do social justice and do what? Oh, I have to speak. Okay. But what story, I think, I want to know what story prompted you to be on the mural in Buffalo?
Um, it was the social justice. It wasn't even my long form. It wasn't my investigative work. It was that night. It just I got a text message from my old boss. It was May 30th, so it just passed. And literally, it's just the night that changed the my career. You know, it put me on the map. People got to see who I was as a journalist and who I am as a journalist as a human being. If there's anything I can share with your audience, I think it would be that there are not enough human beings in journalism. And when you talk about preparing to enter this industry and going for your first job and doing well at your first job, the only thing, I mean, a lot of people are looking for examples of how to do that, how to be a journalist, how to be a great journalist. And I'm like, I always tell them, well, you can't teach somebody how to care.
That's right.
Cannot teach somebody how to do that. And I think that night people got to see that I'm like, not only do I live here, I pay taxes here. I'm scared. I'm worried about my friends who are out there, who are young Black people, because I'm in this community and I'm reporting for them, for their families, for your family, so you know what is going on here. So I think that night changed my career, and then people got to, it didn't change the work I was doing. I had been doing that all along.
Yeah.
It was just a platform for people to see, and then they said, okay, what else can you do? And I was like, well, let me show you. So.
Well, and you were in preparation. You were a good steward over the small. So you're like, I don't care if somebody got knocked off 10 cents with their gas. So is everybody getting knocked off 10 cents? So y'all making over $12,000 a month. Oh, you know what? You're going to get your money back. Everybody's going to get a reimbursement check, but you did well in the little. So then when it was, you were prepared to say, listen, it's a go time. You're dealing with COVID. You're dealing with people who, some of them, they cannot see their families even at the funeral.
Yeah.
And then you have to go back around and then talk about social justice, George Floyd. And I really think it's important as a journalist, you do have to care. Even if you are turning a story, excuse me, even if you are turning the story in 90 seconds, a minute and 30. Now, before we get out of here, I do want to ask you about two more questions. What would you say to young journalists? They are not sure what they want to do, but they know they want to be in journalism. How can they navigate and find out?
That's a great question. And even on the preparation, I want to circle back to that after this. But young journalists who aren't sure what they want to do, but they just know that they have a heart for journalism, I think that means you have a heart for community. Because no one just wants to go into, like, I promise you it's not a glamorous job. I promise you're going to have to decide between going to sleep and eating dinner a few nights in your career. I worked from 2 a.m. to 7 o'clock at night. So if anybody who has an interest in journalism, but they're not quite sure, I would say explore your community, find what you have a heart for, and keep reporting there. You're going to be required to do a lot of other things that aren't exactly where your passion lies. But once you find out what really makes you tick, what really gets you going, that's going to be some of your best work. You know, there's a girl who, I mean, I love issues of social justice and equity. There's another girl who loves dogs. I called her the dog beat reporter. I mean, and her stories did so well. I'm like, oh my gosh, we're gonna do another story about some puppies. But people loved it because she had a heart for that. And some other girl loved knitting. So she was into the arts and the craft scene and the, culture. But like whatever is in your heart, whatever your passion is, continue to explore the community in that region, because there are also people who have an interest in that, and you're bringing something unique to your newsroom, whatever your passion is, dogs, food, or knitting.
So that's a good point.
Yeah.
And you have to tell us what's next.
For me?
I know you're here, you just started, but looks like after this you're going to network. So you have to tell us I know you are in your dream role, but what's your dream position? Do you want to be, who was it on 2020 who would anchor? I forget her name, but I just want to know what's your next thing.
So here's something I want to talk. I'll tell you and your members. This is a little insider.
Only 5,000 people. Oh yeah,
just 5,700 people. I turned down network jobs to take this one. I turned down upwards of $60,000-$70,000. And for any journalist starting out, that was more than my whole salary, at some points. And I had interviewed with some networks coming out of Buffalo, right? Which is just,
I know about Buffalo.
You know about Buffalo, and a lot of people, I have a lot more opportunities. Like I haven't even done a single story, and I did do a story here, but I haven't turned a big investigation of Atlanta. But so many people are reaching out now just because I say I'm in Atlanta as opposed to Buffalo, just because of the market size, right, and the respect that's put on somebody in this. But can I go to network? Sure, but I think what I told you before about just having a heart for community is why I haven't made that move yet. I have a lot of friends who are network reporters, and that's a tough life. It's a life where it requires you going in and out of different communities and trying to find a story. I was in Minneapolis for the Chauvin verdict, and it was similar to a network role. I went in for a week, and I'm like, I've never been here before. I have to find connection. I have to reach out, and it was tough. It was hard. So I have a lot of respect for those network journalists who are going into communities they've never seen in their life for the biggest stories, trying to find that connection. It's hard. For me, I don't know what's next. I know the person who was in my role before me went on to become a news director and is leading a newsroom in New York right now. But for me right now, like I'm just really focused on trying to tell meaningful stories that are going to change the world. Once I change the world, I can tell you what things look like from my perspective better.
Thank you. And I'll tell you this, you changed Virginia. You made your mark on Syracuse. You changed Buffalo completely. My family, they call me, text me, Kamara, it's this girl. Her name is Madison. Oh my gosh, y'all have got to meet. I said, okay, I've seen her on Twitter. They said, no, she is it. No, we want her. We love her. We need her to stay. She's knocking down on doors. I said,
I was flipping
okay.
tables, knocking doors, kicking windows in. I'm like, we're not about to do this no more. Like I was really Buffalo needed a kick in the butt. It did. It did.
Well, you
So
gave it to them. And Madison, we're glad that you are a part of the DCOW member family. Again, we look forward to having you again. And we just want to say that you are going to do amazing in Atlanta. You already are. You have thousands of people looking up to you. Pretty soon it's going to turn into millions. And we just can't wait for your next story because I'm recording on my Roku.
okay. Record on your Roku. We're gonna share it, and I'm excited. I have some really I hope impactful stories that are coming out. So I'm happy to be in this role, and I'm really honored to even be a part of this tonight with the DCOW community. So look forward to next time.
Okay, but we will see you all later. You stay right here. I'm going to stop this. And for everyone who watched us, thank you. For all of our YouTube subscribers and family and friends, thank you. And we look forward to seeing you again next week. Bye bye. Now, let me stop this. Let's go here.